I'm really excited about this panel because I love bots and I love AI, and they're both terrifying and also super exciting. But Brendan, I want to first start with you. I'd love to get an example from you of a recent interaction or a good example that you have of a bot in action that you admire or think is really good.
Yeah, so maybe biased here, but I've come from Spotify. I don't know if anybody uses Spotify, but essentially all of the machine learning algorithms there for deciding on who listens to what are powered by AI and deep learning techniques. So every time you wake up in the morning and you hit play, or you ask Siri to play you some chill music or happy music, that's all just AI powered. So definitely in terms of penetration for my life, that's like hours per day, AI driven kind of features. So
Jim?
Sure. I'd say one of my favorite experiences was I travel a ton, right? So when you're traveling, you want everything to be easy and go through it and things. So I was at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and it was the night before I was supposed to check out, and I thought, hey, how am I going to get a late checkout here? So I pick up the phone and press 0 to get transferred down to the desk. Well, if anyone's tried that at after hours, you don't know where you're going to end up, right? You're going to get transferred somewhere else. You might be talking to someone who's not even in your hotel, or how they're going to do it. So after kind of getting bounced around, I said, I can't wait for this answer to come back. So I remembered when I checked in, I got a little text about their AI bot that said, hey, if you need any help, just type it right here. So I typed it, late checkout, and immediately, an instant response. It knew who I was, what room I was in. It confirmed that I can get a later checkout, and basically just done with one simple little text, into this, no human interaction with it at all, as it went through. And then as I was 2 days after checking out, I thought, I don't know that I ever got my receipt. It's time to do my expense report as things are going through. So I went back to that same bot and texted, can you send me my folio, so I can do my expense report? And it still had the information, and it actually just emailed me my folio. And what I love about that example is the bot was actually a better customer experience than actually talking to the human. So I had a better customer satisfaction score for myself in working with this technology. So implemented really well. I think there's some great opportunities to use these tools.
So Brendan, just tell us a bit more about the bird story and where you guys are growing. Now, everyone's heard about how quickly you guys are growing. I think people here are really curious.
yeah, it's a fascinating story. I'm only relatively new to it myself. For those of you that don't know, Bird is an sharing electric scooter company, launched about a year and a half ago. The growth has just been tremendous. I think in the last 18 months, it's amazing. The company didn't exist 2 years ago. So in the last 18 months, we've gone from 0 to 1,000 employees, 0 to 100 plus cities, 0 to $450 million raised, millions and millions of rides, just absolutely phenomenal. So it's really taken off like crazy, really. And Bird was the first company to market with the idea, and is the market leader right now. And just being able to be close to that and experience that growth is phenomenal.
And so I know there's been a lot of hype about bots and AI over the last couple of years. And I think 2 years ago, it probably peaked. We had bots everywhere, and everyone thought that bots was going to be the answer. So how do you see bots evolving and changing? Jim, you can start first, like hype versus reality.
Yeah, it's absolutely the buzzword, that's out there right now. And can I have a bot? What can my bot do? Not even thinking about the problem, that you're trying to solve. You heard somewhere that you're going to need a bot as it goes through. I think the approach that I take to it, and obviously with TI, we follow sort of a design, build, and deliver the experience as it goes through. So really sort of understanding that problem that you're trying to solve. And in the design phase, you're doing things sort of like journey mapping and sort of trying to figure out what is my true customer experience that I'm trying to go with here. Then you're actually going to build that experience, and it might actually be the bot, that you're looking for as it goes through. So you're now creating that. And in bots, the big challenge is, how do I train it in the beginning to do what it needs to do? So as part of your question, I think Automating that process of training your bot is what we're going to see a lot of things changing for. You're seeing a lot of technologies that are sort of ingesting phone calls in order to generate the term is intents for what your bot is going to be able to do, and then constantly training that through more ingestion so that it can continually write its stuff. And then lastly, you have to be able to deliver that. And I think this hybrid environment of people and technology is a requirement, not a sort of nice to have. You need these bots and tools to offload the simple tasks so that you can have your limited resources of people focused on much, much harder problems.
So Brendan, are we going to see bots answering customer support queries for everything in the future in a few years, or is that going to be a while longer?
I think the important thing to remember here is the bot is just the interface layer. It's the front end of the AI, and I think somewhere along the line that message got a bit. Maybe there was like a kind of a tsunami or a tidal wave of interest around bots, but the bot itself is just the interface layer for the smarts behind that, which is these huge quantums of data which we can all of a sudden ingest, we can store, we can query, we can machine learn and try and derive insights from and apply learning techniques too. So that's the kind of the super powerful shift that we've been experiencing over the last number of years is towards that. And then on top of that, it's a question of how do you surface and take advantage of that technology? How do you present it to the end customer? How do you give it a face or an interface with which people can interact with, through which bots are a medium, but it's not necessarily AI is bots and bots is AI. Bots is just a representation of the technology. It's a portal through which you can communicate with the technology or surface the intent of the technology. So I think for certain use cases, bots make a ton of sense. There was a period, 2 years ago where everybody in every industry tried to use the bot interface as the interface. Everything became a website, then it became an app, then it became a bot. And just like every website doesn't need to become an app, not every app needs to become a bot, or not every website needs to become a bot either. But it is, in certain conversational scenarios, a super impressive way to manage these experiences that you mentioned on your checkout or your check-in experience. So I think it's going to depend on the specific use case.
Okay. And do you see any use cases today where you might think about using bots in a simpler customer experience area or more complex things?
Yeah, I think for sure bots are first line of defense mechanism or tool for companies. They can triage, they can kind of handle some of the lower IQ or lower issued tasks that are easier to complete, just serving up the right folio to the right customer, for example. That doesn't need to bounce through a human in the loop there. That can just be triaged and dealt with and closed. So I think what it does is it pushes the humans higher up in the value chain so that people are doing the harder to do jobs and the bots are servicing the first line of defense. So for sure, I think they have a super important part to play, but really just it's driving humans in the loop further up the value chain.
Okay, yeah. No, I saw a great example there on Uber, where if you lose something in your car and the car is gone and you're like, oh shit, I left my wallet in the car. So when you go to the Uber app and you say I lost something, a bot immediately comes back and says, okay, we'll put you in touch with the driver. And what did you lose? When did you lose it? All done completely automatically. So it's a really, really smart way, but it's not quite AI. And just kind of getting back to the definition between AI and you've got machine learning, AIs. Jim, how would you explain kind of AI to a layperson?
AI is such a ubiquitous term, right? It's everything's in it, and people use it in so many different ways. And even when you see a title, we're going to talk about AI. It's sort of what is it? And I think to your example on bots, if I break down the AI components and really what goes into it, and you think AI is really just trying to trick us into thinking we're talking to a human, right? So there's a whole bunch of tools to trick us that we're actually talking, and there's some tests called the Turing test to see how well it worked. But with that, I think the subset of things that fall under it is one is big data, right? We had the whole talk on data and analytics. So you have to have a really broad source of information that anything that's going to learn needs the information to learn from. So big data is one piece of AI. Natural language processing, or speech to text, sort of at its core, is a super important function of AI as well, because the only way the machines are going to be able to process information is by turning them into a data source that it can work with and it can read to. So if you have all that data, you can generate the data by using some speech to text type function with it. The other piece that's really important with inside AI is what I think most people think of when they hear AI is machine learning. The machine's ability to sort of take all of this data and then make some suggestions out of it and do something with that data and information as it's going forward. So machine learning, a key piece of it, and whether that's supervised or unsupervised learning as it goes through. And then last piece of AI that I think are the tools to put together to create things is robotic process automation. So having, with the data source, with the natural language that it took, with the learning that it did, it has to do something. So that automated process of a robot doing something, all of those components put together in different ways create an AI solution. One of them, a chatbot, right? So I take that natural language processing, I take the learning from what I was doing before, and I automate that process based on some data that I have. I string those all together, and now I have an AI solution that comes from it. So maybe not the layperson's answer that you asked for, but it is definitely all of these components used in different ways to then generate a trick the human experience to think that we're talking to somebody.
So, Brendan, your title is VP of Growth. So, I'd like to know a bit more about that, and also, do you see kind of AI coming into your job in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, we're already super heavily involved in AI from Bird point of view. So we have a thing called a drop engine, which is an AI model that will predict ride volume over area over time. So and then tell us where to deploy the right vehicles at any given time and day based off of historical patterns of usage, weather, foot patterns, everything you can think of. So I mean, the equation that we're trying to solve in terms of getting the right scooter in front of the right person at the right time, that's like not solvable by humans like sitting with your pen and paper trying to figure out what's going on. But it's easily solvable, actually, relatively easily solvable, given the huge quantums of data that we have, if we can compress it and machine learn it and then build models to predict at a capacity or a scale beyond which we could do if we just got together as a group of people to do. So for me, that's always the areas where I look, to see where AI can add kind of a huge return on investment. It's the scale with which you can solve problems that you can't solve without AI. So I think that's just one of there's dozens of examples of AI being used every day in our business to drive greater returns and drive greater insights, really.
I took my first 2 bird rides a couple of weeks ago, actually, in LA as well. I took out the app, and sure enough, there's the bird just right around the corner from where I'm standing. So I experienced the AI tool. It worked really well.
It's great, and the key thing is it's not a static model. It changes over time, over days. So we know where people are, when they're likely going to need to use it, how that's going to change as different external factors impact the model, such as weather, for example. It plays a huge part, time of day, events, etc. So yeah, it's a living, breathing model, all built off of AI.
So, do you think there'll be like a chief AI officer in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been thinking about this a little bit. I think it's like having chief app officer of 2012, right? The AI is just a segment of technology. So in terms of who owns it or which org is responsible for it, like it's a technological tool within the technology org, but like any other product that's being built, the engineering people, the product people, the data people, the design people, the customer-centric people, everybody needs to get together in order to figure out the product market fit for the product that they're building. So I don't think it's any one individual's responsibility. I think it belongs within the engineering org, but collectively as a team, you need to come together and use your multidisciplinary skills to create the product and find the product market fit.
Yeah, I've seen some really interesting studies on this lately as well, too, and maybe not AI officer, but chief digital officer, right? It was really something you're hearing a bunch of, you're digital. But as Brendan said, everything we're doing today is digital in some way or another. So you used to get chief innovation officers, and people say, well, is that one person, the only one who's allowed to do anything with innovation as it goes through? So I heard a really interesting quote on it that said, we don't have a chief electricity officer within the company, right? This one person's responsible for making sure, you don't have that. So I think the way of chief digital officer or chief AI officer is again, it's going to go back to the basic core function, and everybody has a piece in order to deliver that digital experience.
And so, Jim, like in your job, you must be seeing some of the most exciting, cutting edge stuff that companies are doing. What are some of the more interesting things that you've been asked to help companies with in terms of AI?
Yeah, so I mean, it really ranges from, I mean, every possible aspect of the job now is sort of involved in digital transformation is the word that's everyone using. And again, going back to some recent studies, older, more established companies, more traditional brick and mortar, when they think of digital transformation, they really take it more as an internal focus, like how can I digitize my accounting system, or can I move to a cloud-based ERP, or things that are in place. They're really focused very internally on these digital transformation type solutions versus sort of the new economy type companies, the birds of the world and things that are out there, very much focused on an external, right? How can I bring this digital experience to my customers, or how can I make that a part of who we are and the interface that comes through it? So we're obviously seeing a lot on chatbots, the conversation that's coming in, and how can we make that experience better? Different motivators behind that, whether it's a cost-saving initiative. Few folks are really looking at it as, can it actually be a better, more customer satisfaction score type of experience that it comes through. One of the more interesting ones, again, to get to your question, we partner quite heavily with Google as well, and the Google Duplex AI, if anyone's sort of worked with that these days, it is, some are arguing it's actually truly passed the Turing test, that people don't have an idea that they're communicating with a computer on the other end. And what it does is you talk to your phone and you say, hey, make an appointment for me or make a reservation for me for dinner tonight. The AI takes that request and it makes an outbound call to the restaurant on your behalf. So the computer is actually dialing in. The person who picks up at the restaurant has no idea that they're actually talking to a computer. And the AI actually makes the appointment, does the reservation, makes the booking, and then gets back to you and says, no trouble, I made that appointment for you. So that's live in a few cities today. And I think a lot of people are asking, how do we get these types of technologies into our customer experience? We'll save it for another question, I guess, about the reaction from people on that has been quite interesting as well. Yeah,
I was going to say.
So I'd love to I'd like to ask the crowd here, got some great minds here from lots of great, interesting companies, but give us your predictions for the next say, 10 years. How is the work that you're doing today going to change? And where is AI going to get us in the next 10 years? So, Brendan.
Big question. I think for me, and
stock tips next, by the way.
Yeah. For me, it's just telemetry, right? So everything is getting so much cheaper from sensor point of view. So like battery lives are extending, sensors are becoming cheaper, they're becoming more disposable, and basically they're just a pathway towards more data, collection of more data, and just the aggregation of more data. We couldn't store you couldn't store this amount of data before, and now we can store it, and then we couldn't process it. Now we can process it, and now we can kind of learn from it. So I think all industries are going to benefit from just the exponentially increasing amount of volume of data that we're going to have exposure to, and that we're actually going to have a handle on, and the technological tools to kind of build on top of in order for decision making. So I just think it's all going to come back to more and more data, and it's, as to Jim's point, it's the data that's powering the AI, and the more access to it, and cleaner it is, the more real time it is, the more insights you can derive, and that's just going to push us to a whole new level.
Yeah, so I think like so many things in the future, you could kind of learn from the past, right, about what might be coming next and things. And the example I like to give is telephone support 30 years ago, right? You had a receiver and you had 10 digits, right? So someone would call in and they'd say, hey, my phone is broken, and you've got 0 through 9, and hey, can you hear the dial tone? And that's about the extent of customer support. If that doesn't work, send it back in as it goes through. Fast forward to today, and that telephone support becomes, hey, I just crossed the geofence of my house and it didn't trigger my smart garage door to open, which didn't set the mood lighting in the kitchen for the romantic dinner that I was going to make for my wife. Now she's really upset, thinking that I missed my anniversary. What's wrong with my phone? Right as it's coming in. One human's capability to solve the entire environment unaugmented by technology is getting harder and harder and harder. And no offense to the human race, but we're not getting that much smarter as it's going through at the speed at which the technology around us is changing. So I see more and more challenging problems. And as AI will take on things like now it can do password changes, now it can give me a later checkout, it will continue on that path of getting better at doing stuff. But guess what? The problems are going to get harder and harder as they come along too. So the really, super valuable human resource needs to be kept away from those simple problems so that we can leverage them for the more challenging problems. So I think AI is it's not a nice to have, it's a requirement, and will only continue to be even more of a requirement in the future.
So Brendan, you guys have raised a ton of money, 4 to 50 million, and you have the resources in-house. You've got data scientists, you've got AI experts who can build this. If you're a smaller company that hasn't raised a ton of money, what do you do? Like, do you call in outside help? Are there tools out there that you can make you an AI expert?
That's the amazing thing, is particularly around this particular subject. It's incredibly open sourced. From a learning point of view, you can go online and you can get like 4 years worth of coursework on AI to become like one of the most well-read AI people out there, all for free, right? The tools are all open source, so you can just plug in and use Google's natural language processing API. Yeah, exactly. You can use object content recognition APIs. There's just it's all open source. Particularly within this particular division of technology, there's a huge we all benefit from each other's shared learning, and that's open source and move the needle together. So a smaller company, I mean, you could set up a company that has goes very far towards what a much more established company can do as a one-person individual with a laptop and an internet connection, all just leveraging open source tooling and open source learning as well. So it's actually incredibly accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could take it a step further and probably get samples of code that do what you want to do through GitHub. If you really wanted to get out there and stuff to do it. Again, I think thinking of the topic about pitfalls, though, jumping right in and saying, "Hey, I need this particular tool or I need this particular AI," is really sort of cart before the horse. I think you really have to understand your environment, and I underscore that. Design the solution that you're looking for before you've picked the technology that you think you're going to need, as it goes. So when someone says, "Hey, can I get a chatbot?" Okay, well, what is the actual customer problem we're trying to solve here? Because maybe a chatbot's not it. So I think where the pitfalls come in are people jump to that technology that they think is going to be. So they may even go and try to get that technology first, but they didn't think about the why, and that's such an important part, of where you're going with it. So.
I'd love to open up to questions. Surely people have used AI and bots in their own companies. Any questions out there of people who have thought they would come across a great answer with AI and it didn't work out, or did work out?
You're silent. You're taking it easy. Don't rush to the question. Just hold it in for a moment. Really think about it. No pressure.
One of us is an AI, but no.
Exactly.
Which one?
Any other questions on AI, guys, or bots in your companies? We've got a question here.
Yeah, can I toss you this one?
I come from the HR and recruiting side of the house, so not the customer experience, but this has been interesting to see the parallels of the stuff that we're dealing with. It's almost like the same problems in a slightly different context. And I wonder what your thoughts are on applied AI to recruiting and hiring in general. A lot of different opinions. I think I've seen some things that, not AI, but just some predictive stuff in the past that I've looked at that's just been garbage, but executives love data or love to dig into something, and they swear by it. And we had to do to get a stat PhD to do a statistical analysis to show that it was garbage, right? But any thoughts on where that's going, and if I'll be out of a job soon?
So the example I've seen, which I love, within that industry, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's incredibly innovative, I thought. It's a company that allows you to upload your job spec before you release it, and then it will machine learn and tell you how essentially every word in the spec performs from a gender balance. Textio.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
So I just think that's an incredible application. Super clever. The way that as the customer base grows, the whole system actually gets smarter by pulling in more and more job specs and getting more and more customers. Your product actually gets better and better. So as a business model as well as a product, I think it makes a ton of sense. And then there's just so much going on through resume screening as well that you obviously know about. Just trying to eradicate again that first layer of defense. I think when I left Spotify, we had 1 million job applicants going to jobs at Spotify, which was just abandoned because it's not possible to get through that many job applications. So like being able to triage and sort through huge quantities of data like that again, and also just kind of to close that out, I've seen some kind of pattern matching being done as well, where you try and take the idealized qualities of your best employees that are already in your company, and then pattern match that against people that are applying, applicants that are applying, to see how closely do they match the qualities that you're valuing in your best employees that are already in your company. So there's just, again, it's just a huge data problem, right? It's matching supply and demand and huge quantities of data, sifting through it. I think there's a ton of upside there. So.
Yeah, so at TELUS International, we have just about 40,000 employees, right? So you can imagine, again, the number of people that are applying and going through that. Very similar to the scenario that I talked about before, which is, hey, it gets really hard to go through when you have these large numbers of people to recruit and go through, and anywhere that you can actually apply technology to that, whether it be an automated screening process to kind of filter out the basic level of things that you want to go through. Using natural language processing for language detection. Do you actually meet the basics if we're hiring someone who needs to be able to speak Italian or German? Calling in and actually having the bot give a nice score as to whether or not they did well in those type of things. Background checks, security checks. People get all kinds of crazy what you want to put on your resume and things like that. So there's no shortage of ways in which AI is being applied, or those subsets of AI are being applied. And back to the comment, it's not going to be a nice to have anymore. You're going to have this technology. Otherwise, you're just going to be guessing off a piece of paper. What is this person really who they say they are? That's applying for here.
Great. Any final questions before we get to our last final speaker? Awesome. Okay, I'd like to have a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much, guys.